Rebecca Turner said it's unconstitutional, therefore.
We're live, we're live.
Sorry, I can't help myself to those emails.
Yeah.
Doctor, thank you for being here. We were looking at the crimes, but there's also another issue that's arisen, and Wendy Knight, the head of Liquor and Lottery, will be here at 11 to discuss the background check form. But if you could go over the crimes again.
So we're on page 16 of the unofficial version. I think in the official version you all were looking at, it was 26, something like that. But it's section 1325 within page 127. The crimes and penalties is currently written in subsection A apply to any person who is not permitted to conduct sports wagering under the chapter. That was the first thing that the committee flagged yesterday when we looked at this. Who operates, conducts, or exposes sports wagering for play in the state would be subject.
Our goal is to get at the offshore illegal betting, and I'm going to use the term bookies, but I don't know what the term would be in the state, not. And it seems like the way this is written, it's at the license fee, and that wasn't the intent.
So subsection B applies to the operators. These are the agents of the state, licensees, if you will, who are allowed to conduct sports wagering, and those are strictly monetary fines that are applied to the agents of the state. Subsection A applies to any person who is not licensed under the chapter. It provides for both fines and terms of imprisonment, or both.
Do you think that's clear enough that it's non-agents of the state?
Yes, because it is a person who is not permitted to conduct sports wagering pursuant to this chapter.
Okay.
Can I ask about the word exposes there? I'm not sure what the usage is. How do you expose sports wagering?
That is a fantastic question. So that series of actions is directly taken from the existing Title 13 provisions for gambling, wagering, contests, and de facto casino hosting. And exposing for play likely means advertising, like putting it out there.
So it's a term of art in the existing law.
Right.
Okay. Is there a definition somewhere?
There is not a definition in the wagering subchapter of the gambling offenses in the law.
But you're saying exposing for play is the construction that
exists currently, yes. I did take a look based on the committee's concern around whether this was going to be too broad and capture individuals who are offering or exposing to play sports wagering in their basement or attic or at the bar or whatever, and not just corporations that are using internet and mobile devices to offer sports wagering in Vermont. And when I looked through the Title 13 existing provisions, there are some constructs that exclude natural persons and only apply to corporations, associations, and partnerships. So there is a precedent in Title 13 for gambling offenses to apply strictly to effectively business entities. And I can send Peggy a citation to the gambling devices statute. So likely slot machines, but slot machine penalties in Vermont apply exclusively to associations, corporations, and partnerships.
So would this definition under crimes and penalties, where it says a person who is not permitted to conduct sports wagering, does that kind of go against what the precedent is that you just described?
Well, all of the other gambling offenses use person in the list of entities that could be captured, which would include natural persons.
Okay.
But the committee did ask whether we could exclude natural persons and just target corporations as part of this And the answer is yes, there's at least a precedent for it within gambling crimes.
I just want to be sure that a bar running a Super Bowl pool isn't going to come under this rather than the Title 13 current laws where we exempted that bar as long as they weren't making a profit out of it or getting any of it.
Well, if the bar, even if you were to change it, if the bar was an association, corporation, or partnership, the business entity could be subject to the penalties.
But no, you didn't, I don't think that's my question. My question is, I want to be assured that we've exempted them current law, Title 13. And any changes we make here continue to exempt them from criminal penalties. You know, many of the sports bars in my area, and all the Super Bowl squares, you know, you buy a square.
Right.
Maybe you don't, but some people buy squares. And, you know, if it all turns out well, they win some money. They win a quarter of the pool. That's how it works. And the bar does it, obviously, to attract more customers. But they're not making a profit on it. I just want to be sure that they're not going to be falling under this new provision.
Are we sure they're not making a profit?
Well, we're not, but
In other words,
they're not supposed to.
right, so if it's like a charity organization or something, if it's because I don't know how you,
Well, Kevin's Sports Bar in North Bend. They'll really appreciate the advertising. Runs a Super Bowl pool. I haven't entered into it in years, but they do it every year. And it's a big bunch of squares. People buy the squares. You know, the money is divided amongst whoever wins those squares. To the best of my knowledge, the bar never takes a dime, but obviously it does bring people in.
Bring in patrons and that.
You know,
It's a
but
simple process.
I just want to make sure that they're not going to be changing under this provision. That the Title 13 protections that we gave them years ago. Remember, Bill Sorrell was Attorney General, and some state's attorney in a particular county in southern Vermont decided to prosecute some organization.
I don't know if it's gambling at that point, then, not to, because you got 10 squares across and 10 squares down, so you got 100 squares, and there's no numbers on any side of it yet, so you just put your name into a square. And after it's all filled, then in baseball, it will draw 0 through 9 as it comes out. And so at the end of the game, if your name is here and it's 3, you know, whatever the final score is, National American, that's where you draw the winner. So you're just buying a square. It's really.
But my question is to ensure that
I don't think you should.
we're under the exemptions that we put in, and this 1325 doesn't change that. And you can assure us that it doesn't.
I don't think he can assure it.
They'd like you to.
I can tell you that the definition of sports wagering that is used within H127 is substantially different from what you are describing.
The
So,
first time it
yes.
comes up, when Kevin's gets busted.
right. So there's going to be a couple differences. First, the definition of sports wagering is different. There is a beyond the risk to the individual who's entering the contest, there's actually a wager happening. And the way that the exception that you're discussing is constructed, the individual isn't wagering, they're entering a contest essentially. And then there's the second element of the exception that you brought up, which is that the entity that is operating the contest or the pool isn't profiting. The contestants enter, they pay an entry fee, and all of the winnings go to the contestants. I believe that all of those entities are supposed to be registered as nonprofits before meeting that exception, but I have to
Don't
brush
think
up
they
on the
are.
crossover between
I-
Title 13
I
and Title
think there
31.
is, that may be something for another day, but if you've assured my concerns.
And if I am wrong, you will hear from me within the hour about how wrong I was.
Probably.
And I will avoid showing my face on YouTube again.
Let's, back to the crimes and penalties, is the committee okay with the House passed version of 127? In terms of crimes and penalties.
The committee did ask me to do a little bit of research and come back
Yeah.
on the scope of the crimes and penalties. For background, I did research on neighboring states that were easy to research. I excluded Massachusetts because their statutes are
Yeah.
so difficult. Pennsylvania and New Jersey. So New Hampshire, sports wagering crimes are a Class B misdemeanor. That's a $1,200 fine, 1 to 7 years of imprisonment. That would be similar to our existing bookmaking penalties that we have in Title 13. In New York, $5,000 or twice the amount of the profit experienced by, in this case, a corporation, which could be, if it's a Class A misdemeanor, less than 1 year imprisonment for an individual. If it's a Class E felony, 1 to 5 years. And there are varying grades of misdemeanors and felonies associated with specific wagering crimes in New York. However, they have instituted the option with respect to sports wagering for the Lottery Commission to impose a $100,000 monetary penalty whenever an entity is convicted of violating the sports wagering statutes. In Pennsylvania, the first offense is not more than $150,000, or if it is a licensed entity, $300,000 to $600,000. For a second offense, $300,000 if it's an individual natural person, or $600,000 to $1.2 million if it's a licensed entity, and not more than 5 years in prison. In New Jersey, it is $25,000 if it's a natural person, or $100,000 if it's a corporation, and depending on the scope of the crime committed, could include imprisonment, and they have a very complicated calculus that goes into whether.
Personally, I think we should double the fines, A. In other words, first offense, not more than 50,000, second, not more than 150,000, third, not more than 300,000.
I'd be fine with that if we create a delineation between people versus corporations, or other
That
entities.
other state he just mentioned it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I'd like to do that just because I know, it's often lower income folks are the ones who, engage in a lot of gambling. And I think separating the fines that would be imposed on, like the examples that we talked about, some guy running a gambling ring in his basement compared to the revenue that DraftKings is bringing in, two very different circumstances.
Or the Nigerian corporation.
Yes, or the Nigerian corporation.
So are you moving to up and under the person's category or the operator's category?
No, the
Both.
operator is somebody who's licensed to operate in Vermont.
Oh, so it is delineated then.
So I'm talking about in A, that's the person.
So you're looking to
We're gonna make
up
a
the
person, a non-natural person.
A corporation, association, or partnership.
Oh, okay, so, okay.
So I'm not talking about the operator, I'm not talking about DraftKings. If they become an operator, they would come under the 25 grand, 50 grand, 75, and
under B, right?
they'd be under B. I'm talking about people that come under A.
Okay.
That are not licensed, they're not licensed operator, they haven't contracted with the state. And I'm just based upon what the other states have done, and it's an up to, it's not necessarily, but it gives more flexibility.
Excellent. Just procedurally,
It'll come from
yes.
Sears and anyone else on the committee who wants to sign on, who can let us know right now.
Still slightly unclear, and maybe that's just, I don't know. But what are we planning to do again with the person definition? We're changing that?
We can change that if you'd
Okay,
like the other state did, the person versus the op. But what did you say, corporate?
Corporation. Yeah, that's the
I'm
term
fine
that's
with that
used
code too.
two of the other states, and in our statutes, the terms that's used in Title 13 for certain offenses is corporation, association, or partnership.
Okay,
But that falls under B, under operator, right?
no, it falls under A.
That's, we're
Yeah.
working on the concept of person.
So the way that it would fall out if you made that change is that if it's a natural person, they would be charged under the Title 13 existing provisions for bookmaking. If it's a corporation, association, or partnership, they could be charged either under Title 13
Or
or
this.
this.
That's good.
I like the delineation of natural people versus the corporations. I wonder, and I'm not opposed to raising the fines, but I can't remember what state you said did it, that made it up to double the profits. I sort of like that because it sort of gets,
Problem is who determines what's profit? How do you determine the profit of a
Right.
criminal
process.
enterprise?
If it's been going on underground for years,
Yeah.
there'd be no way to know.
okay.
When you
Unless
collect
you
evidence.
had, IRS involved and.
I mean, would there be a way to make it that it's up to twice the profit or the fine amounts that you have suggested, whichever is more? That way, if you can determine the profit, you can do it that way, but if not,
Yeah, but that kind of forces whoever's prosecuting to, doesn't it?
I just can't see how you would determine.
Yeah, I'm really worried about
Okay.
determining profit of a bookmaking organization from New Jersey that happens to set up shop in Vermont through one agent.
I was
As
just
far
gonna,
as the fact-finding question, determining what the amount of the fine would be, it's a little out of my depth, but I would assume that would actually be imposed by the court, not the charging officer or the state's attorney bringing the charge to the court. But again, I'm not the
I'd
judiciary.
rather,
I mean, I was just gonna say, that's part of the subpoena. Something you can get from a subpoena, from an investigation, and then you have the discovery
And it-
process.
these are pretty high fines, so they can base their fines based upon the behavior. So we're gonna change it to corporation, partnership, et cetera, and double the fines in A, and leave B as it is. That's good.
So that's up to those amounts, right?
Yeah.
Court can do what they want.
Or both. And by the way, it says, it's written so that it's or in prison not more than 6 months or both. So they could be in prison, they could get a $50,000 fine and in prison not more than 6 months or both.
Thought we had a problem with or.
With what,
Be fined not more than 25,000 or in prison not more than 6 months
or both.
or both. Do we add on the or both? Is that, I remember
That's
discussion
normal,
about that.
right?
Well, I
It
think
allows
it's
for most
normal,
discretion.
and, normally it reads in Title 13 for a first violation of subject, be fined not more than 25,000 and in prison not more than 6 months.
Right.
The way it's written.
Now, that was or versus and.
Yeah, I don't know if that's stylistic for this particular section.
This allows for the either or
Yeah,
situation.
so I'm okay with it since it says or both, but usually when we read criminal statutes, it's,
This leaves it open in particular for these business entities that you're thinking of. The option for the state's attorney or whoever would be bringing the charge would be to either impose a fine on the corporation, or if it's possible, to pierce the veil there.
get the CIA. Not CFO.
CFO.
None of these are felonies, correct? These are all misdemeanors, 6 months, 1 year.
Yeah.
And not more than 2 years, so that's still a misdemeanor.
Yeah, it stays all misdemeanor.
Okay.
Okay, Tucker, hang on if you can.
I will.
Wendy, do you have a proposal of amendment
I
regarding
do, Mr. Chair.
FBI?
Yes,
Regarding background checks.
yes. Good morning, nice to see you all again. Wendy Knight, what am I? I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Liquor and Lottery. Thank you. So what we discovered last year when we were doing our licensing of liquor licensees is that The department does not have the specific statutory authority to conduct criminal background checks through VCIC. And so my general counsel had flagged this for sports betting because obviously we will need to conduct criminal background checks. And we would need that specific statutory authority to do so. So that is the language that he had sent as proposed language, which I sent this morning. And
I'm gonna forward that right now to Peggy so she can print it out to the committee. I should have done it half an hour ago.
well, I probably should have sent you the information more than this morning, but things are moving quickly, so. But that's basically
See if you
what
can
it
put
is
that
it grants us the specific statutory authority to conduct that, which we would need.
So your liquor investigators don't have the authority to go into NCIC or request it to a neighbor?
Nope, we do not have the specific statutory authority to request criminal background checks through VCIC. So this language that we will modify will basically give the department, it's modifying, if I'm right, Tucker, it's Title 31.
31
Yeah.
VSA.
So we will
1307.
now have the authority when we include this in the sports betting bill.
If we,
If, we will, if, of course, sorry, I'm just saying this language would address that. But clearly we need, so right now what we do for the liquor licenses is they conduct criminal background checks through Vermont State Police. But we can't go to the FBI through BCIC.
so for.
liquor licenses.
DraftKings applies to be sports betting, you wouldn't be able to do background checks on the person.
Unless we had the specific language that we're requesting to have, because it would be vital that we would be able to conduct criminal background checks on the sports betting operators.
That seems pretty reasonable. I'm surprised you don't already have that authority, given the work you do.
We're working on it.
GLC has powers of arrest, right?
Pardon me?
Liquor investigators have powers of arrest, right?
Yes, yeah, they're
That's
certified
why-
law enforcement.
Yeah, that's why I don't understand why they don't. That's an oversight, I would say.
Thank you, Peggy.
How are you, Peggy? And I did speak with Commissioner Morrison this morning on my way to the State House, and she's obviously fine to have VCIC do this work.
We could include this as our amendment if Tucker can draft it. And I'm gonna say anybody who doesn't want to be on the amendment, on the total amendment on the committee, are happy enough. They don't have to be. I don't see this as a problem. I always thought you had that authority. But
So did we?
Tucker, did you want?
So under 7 VSA section 215, and this was added last year, DLL does have authority to perform background checks on applicants for liquor or tobacco licenses through VCIC and the FBI. So one option might be to just amend that existing statute to add or sports betting operators. And
Probably the
that would be
simplest thing.
sufficient. That would, in that section, allow DLL to perform those background checks on sports betting.
Sounds simpler.
And then maybe the express authority in the procedures to allow DLL to, through the bidding process, acquire permission for those background checks.
That's fine. That work for you?
That works as long as we have the express authority to do
Well,
that.
evidently you did. For
Well,
liquor and
Not
wine.
until we amend it to.
Just as of July 1st, 2022. That was something that was added to miscellaneous alcoholic beverages and.
I just, I don't know if my general counsel is telling me that we don't have the express authority, so.
Well, it's both and, because you don't have the express authority for sports
Sports
betting.
betting. yeah.
Correct, no, but this came up in terms of. Wow.
Maybe they haven't handed out the green books over there yet.
Thank you. So what, I know, so, thank you, Tucker.
Don't worry about it. What's
Great,
up? Is there
just-
anybody in this committee who would not want to be on the amendment? that we're gonna over it's S1, H127, whatever it is. I guess we're good.
Excellent.
That was simple.
That was simple. Thank you. Thank you for
But
making.
we also found you already have the authority for
Yes.
liquor and lottery, so go right ahead.
Tucker's amazing.
So you
Good.
leave judiciary far more powerful.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Have a good day.
Glad to help. So I'm just gonna. It's not gonna get voted out of finance until this afternoon, so. We don't need it right away.
Tucker just has to run out to grab themselves.
Oh,
Don't you want to make it